there's kind of a couple last minute questions that I always kind of ask people. One of them is for book recommendations, and for you, you can recommend a whole bunch because I know you're like me and you read like crazy. So what are your book recommendations? Specifically,
In
do
the
you have book
marketing world.
recommendations towards some of the stuff we talked about?
Sure.
Maybe copywriting, funnel building, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, and I know we talk about this a lot. Like, if a book's not engaging, we generally just put it back on the shelf. But I find myself rereading books more and more, and instead, I do buy a ton of books because I'm like, this is interesting, and I like don't read it. But my main advice first off, before I tell you the books, is like reread books that have brought you value in the past because I guarantee you've forgotten.
Yeah,
and
sure.
start a book blog. I just have a Google Doc where I take notes
I
as
do
I
the same
read.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like super helpful. But for copywriting, there's a million different books on the subject. I found like the basic. There's a book called Copy Hacks, and it's a very to the point, simple, gets the basics down. And for me, sometimes just making sure I understand the basics is the first step, and making sure I can adapt them to what I want to do. I'm trying to think of another. We love this book. I know Essentialism.
Yeah.
It's more of like a mindset book, but it really helps me look at all the different opportunities. Because the funny thing is, the more your business grows, the more opportunities come knocking at your door, and the value comes in not to opening all those doors, but being decisive in which ones you open.
Yeah.
And having them always help towards reaching one big goal that you have, which is kind of the theme of the counterpart of that book, The One Thing.
Yeah. I feel like Essentialism is one of those books that you probably have to read like once a year, because what ends up happening is you read that book, you want to start to cut out a whole bunch of stuff in your life, you start to cut it all out, and then you're like, I've got room for more now.
Yeah.
And then a year goes by, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I should probably go through that book again and start to think through where I should cut things out again.
Yeah, 100%. And that's part of the hiring the right people process, is like, make sure they know your goals and hold you accountable to them, because it's easy to come up with new goals, man, and it is fun. I love brainstorming new goals, but executing the last 10% of a goal is the most important part, and it's the hardest. So, so that's a great book. There's tons of these like staple books that everybody should read, but one recently I've been kind of rereading and looking at it from the networking side, is that How to Win Friends and Influence People book, which it's funny, the about the third time reading through it now, and I realize it's like a masterclass in manipulation, but it works really freaking well with building connections with people, because it's all about listening and all that. And the main point I got away from it was like, don't worry about winning an argument. Like most 99% of arguments aren't worth winning. You're just going to, like, it's not that you're giving up on your values and your character, like you're just causing conflict. So you can just let the other person win unless they're important to you. If they're important to you, make sure you get your point across. But I thought that was such a fascinating side of it. So I just don't have arguments hardly anymore. I just, if they want to think that, go for it. I'll try to get my point across, but it's not my job to change people's minds. So those are there's so many books. Gosh.
Well, you're like me too. I mean, I'm on Amazon. I probably order a book a day. I mean, I'm pretty bad about it. If you've ever seen any of the videos that I shoot on my webcam, you see my bookshelf. Yeah. If you watch my first video from 6 months ago, and you watch my video from yesterday, it's like every day the bookshelf's probably got a few more books on it. Yeah. So I'm a collector for sure. So I'm in that same boat. If somebody asked me to give a book recommendation, I would probably say, well, there's this one and this one and this one, and yesterday I read this one, and I'd probably give you 20 books. So cool. So your big three right now: Copy Hacks, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and
I feel like that's such a generic answer. I have to give another one, because Win Friends and Influence People. Reread that.
I've never read Copy Hacks, so that's a good one I need to check out.
Insight Selling is another fantastic book. It's a little more analytical than most people like. It's not like a self-help book, but it's how to sell with insights, which is what we've been talking about. And it's like the science behind it, and like the best salespeople in the world use it.
So kind of the type of stuff we were talking about, where I would do like a consulting call with somebody, get a bunch of data, use that information to sell more people, kind of thing.
Well, and it's about that conversation that is counterintuitive. Like, they think this way, but they're wrong. And most people in the buying process, like the easiest way to sell a $20,000 website is to tell somebody they don't need a website, because no one wants to buy a $20,000 website. They want to buy a $20,000 marketing system. So I never sold websites when I figured that out. I was like, I'd come into people who want to buy a website for $4,000, and I'd say, listen, all these people are going to tell you, hey, I can do this website for $3,000, great. Like, go hire them, but you're not going to get results because here's why. And that's the insight to them, like teaching them why a website is not worth anything unless you have a marketing plan. So learning that about your business is so important, because you can sell for 10 times the industry average.